Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 8 of my 2020 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be using this adorable set from Lawn Fawn called A Creature Was Stirring. So I stamped my images out on some Nina Solar White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm starting with my mice, and for them I'm using E31, E33, and E35. Wanted to do some little brown mice today. So I started with that E35 and laid in some shadows down the back of the first guy's body, also under his big fluffy chef's hat and on the underside of his arms. And then I'm blending that out with the E33. Just pulling the edge of that E35 out a little bit so that I get a nice soft blend. And then I will go in with that E31 and pull that color out even further. So I'm going to finish out all of the white space on his body, and I'm going to leave a little white space on his nose. I'll take my colorless blender and just go over the edge of that to soften the transition. And then I'm going to do the other mouse exactly the same, but I'm going to reverse my shadows. So hers are going to be on the right hand side of her body since she's facing toward the left. So I'll blend that out with the E33 again and just finish off coloring her in the same way. I think these little mice are just super adorable and I was so excited to get to play with them today. So I'm going to finish with that E31, just leaving a little space around her nose as well. And I'm going to leave the feet white for now too, because I'm going to come back and do something different with those later. Again, taking that colorless blender to soften the transition area. And then I'll bring in YR000 and YR00 to color the insides of their ears and their noses and feet, and also the belly of the first little guy who has his showing. So I'll use that YR00 first and then just blend out softly with that Y000, and on the belly I also let that fade out into the white. I'm moving on to my little spice cake, and for that I'll use E23, E25, and E27. So I'm going to add a little shadow on the outside edges and then also on the right hand side underneath the frosting drips. And then I'll blend that out with the E25. So I'm just saving a little bit of area right up under the frosting for that E23 and then also the center area down below. I am going to come back and do a little more detail on this, but I want to let that dry first. So I'm going to move on to my little gingerbread mouse and color him with those same shades. I think he is such a cute image and I absolutely had to use him on my card today. So I decided that I was going to make him a little cake top decoration. So they just stuck a gingerbread cookie in the top to kind of make it look a little more festive and cute. So for him, I just put the darkest shades on the outside edges because cookies tend to get a little bit more brown on those places. And then I'm coming back with that E27 and doing some dot detail on my spice cake just to make it look a little bit more realistic. For the frosting, I'm going to use E40 and E41. I don't like using grays for frosting because I just don't think it looks very appetizing, but this kind of gives it almost like a really soft vanilla type feel. So I use that E41 at the bottom, flicked up with the E40, and then I went back with that E41 and added a bit more shading. I'm also going to use those two shades to color in the chef's hat because I wanted to keep my color palette really simple on today's card. And I'm going to use that to color in every other stripe on those two candy canes. And I will also use it to add just a little bit of shading to the apron on the little girl mouse. I'm going to add some more accessories to that in a little bit, but I wanted to have some basic shading on it. I'm going with more of a traditional Christmas color palette today, so next I need some red. I'm using R24, R29, and R39, and I will first use those to color in the little holly berries. I'm also going to use those shades to color in the stripes on the candy canes. And I'm going to skip the R39 on those just because there's not a lot of room. So I'm just using the R29 as the darkest and then blending out with the R24. I'll use the R29 to color in the top little button on the gingerbread mouse. And then I'm going to take the R29 and add some patterns onto the little mouse's apron. So I'm going to be using some pattern paper later on that has tiny little holly berries on it. So I was attempting to make her little apron match that pattern paper. So to do that, I just did tiny little clusters of 3 berries with 1 large and 2 small. So next I'm taking G14 and G16 and just adding tiny little leaves next to those holly berries. I don't know, I think it looks okay, especially once you get the pattern paper on the card. I think that really pulls the whole thing together. I'll use that G16 to color in the other little button on the gingerbread mouse. And then I will use those 2 shades to color in the leaves on the holly as well. Just added a little line of shading with that G16 and then blended out with the G14. And then I wanted the cake stand to be kind of like that jade glass that I think is so pretty. It's you can often find it in like vintage shops like Goodwill or just places like that. So I'm using G00, G00, and G02 for that. So I added a little shadow with the G02 first, and then I'm blending that out with the G00, trying to keep those darkest colors to a minimum because I really want it to look like that glass, which is often very pale in color. So I'll use that G00 to finish things off and just blend everything out. And then I also decided to use those 3 shades to color in the little belt of the apron. And then the last thing I have is that whisk. And so in order to make it look like metal, I'm going to use some cool grays, using C0 and C1 to add just a little light shading to that. And then I'll trim these images out with their matching dies. For my sentiment, I'm just going to take the leftover cardstock and stamp at the bottom using Lawn Fawn's lobster ink. And I'm using the sentiment that says, "We whisk you a Merry Christmas," which is so funny. I absolutely had to use that sentiment. It's too cute. So I stamped that down a few times to get a good impression. And then I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI. And I'm using Lawn Fawn's guava cardstock, which has more of like a pinky red to it, which I thought would just be something fun. I'm stamping on the inside with that same lobster ink, and I'm using another little mouse with pot holders and a loaf of bread and some steam lines and the sentiment that says, "Let's bake the world a better place." I'm going to combine some pattern papers from the Snowy Day Remix and the Let It Shine 6x6 Petite Paper Pack. So I'm going through my offcuts from last year first and selecting a few of those leftover pieces. And then I'm going to go through the Let It Shine and find some patterns that I think are going to match well. And the great thing is that both of these pads share a similar color palette, so they really work well to mix and match. So these are the pieces that I'm going to be using. I have that teal stripe, I have a red snowflake, teal polka dot, that holly print, and then I have a text print. I'm going to trim all of these down. And the first thing that I'm going to use is the holly print and the text print, which I trimmed down using the Stitch Circle Stackables. And I'm going to adhere that to a plain white piece of cardstock just to give it a little more stability because this piece is going to be my focal panel. and then I will adhere that little text print down at the bottom to create a tablecloth or floor. And then the other pieces I've trimmed out using the large stitch rectangle stackables for the stripe. And then the red snowflake I selectively die cut using the Stitch Party banner dies. I just die cut the bottom edge of that to give me that fishtail banner with the stitching detail. So I will adhere the teal and white stripe flat to the card base. And this one covers the entire front of the card. And I'm just going to make sure that it's lined up nicely with the outside edges. That's why I love using liquid glue, because it gives you that little bit of wiggle room to make sure that everything is on there nice and straight. And then I'm going to take this red snowflake print and adhere that down the center of the card. And then I've got that teal with the white polka dots, and I've die cut that using the scalloped circle stackables. And I'm going to glue my focal panel on top of that, so it'll have that really pretty scalloped border. So I'm just making sure that that is lined up straight on there as well. And then I've added some foam tape to the back of that. So I will peel off those release papers, and I'm going to center that on the card a little towards the top. Once I'm happy with that placement, I will press that down into place. And now I can begin to adhere my images. I'm going to start with that cake stand since it's going in the center of the card. So I'll add some liquid glue to the back of that and put that just on the edge of that text print. So I'm imagining that they're standing on the table, and that is the tablecloth. I'll add the cake on top of the cake stand, and then I have the little mouse gingerbread cookie that's going to be my cake decoration, so I'll tuck him on the top. And then I'm also going to add the little holly berries. I'm going to put that over on the left hand side. Then I'll take the little boy baker, and he is going to go over on the left as well. I'm going to put him down a little bit low though, so that I can add the whisk to his hand and have that kind of sticking up as if he is putting the finishing touches on the frosting on the cake. And it also is going to tie into that sentiment. And then I've got my little girl mouse that is all decked out in her festive apron to match the background wallpaper. And I'm going to have her a little bit closer so that she can be reaching up to add this little candy cane. So they are decorating the cake together. And then I have one more candy cane, and I thought that I would just add that towards the bottom of the cake stand, kind of fill in that space a little bit there. So I've trimmed down my sentiment with the everyday sentiment banners, and I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back of that, and I'll line that up with one of the lines of that text print, just cover that up completely, replacing it with my sentiment strip. And it would not be a Christy Christmas card without some crystal stickles, so I'm going to add that to the frosting, just adding it to the little parts that are dripping down, and then a little bit on the right hand side there, just so it has a nice pretty sparkle. I'll also add some to the holly berries and the candy canes. And I'm going to add some onto the little girl's apron as well, just to give her a little bit of sparkle, and to the chef's hat. And then I'm also going to put some on the top of the whisk so that it matches the frosting. And then I decided that I just wanted a few little other pops of color and something that would be a nod to those holly berries. So I decided to pull out some enamel dots. These are from Echo Park, and I'm just choosing a couple different sizes and colors to use. I did clusters of 3 to kind of mimic the 3 holly berries. So I have a green, a dark red, and then kind of that brighter pinky red that really matches that pattern paper. And I just used a different size of each color for those. So there you can see all of the sparkle and shine on that card. And there's another peek at the inside. I really love how this one turned out, and I hope that you guys do too. If you did, please be sure to give the video a like and subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. I'm posting new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right now. And if you'd like to keep watching, here is day 8 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series. And if you'd like to check out the products that I used today, those are all listed and linked for you below the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.